good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Francis Trainor on behalf of Barwon Health Foundation. We thank you for joining us today for the first of our series of Legacy Month webinars. Now, for those of you who may have tuned in last year, you may remember that our Bequests Ambassador, Jack Ayerbe, who also joins us this morning, asked me why we can't play some music while we're waiting to begin. So, Jack, that overture was for you.
Thank you.
I asked you the same question last year. Can you name that tune?
No.
Well, I thought someone as cultured as you would have got it. It's the Marriage of Figaro by Mozart. But I would have also accepted the theme from the 1983 movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
Now your days of philandering are over and you're straying from flower to flower.
That's right.
Remember the words.
Anyway, enough of the trivia. I might try you again on that next week. Please let me start with the Acknowledgement of Country. We, the Barwon Health Foundation, acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present. We thank the traditional owners of the custodianship of the land and celebrate the continuing culture of the Wadawurrung people, acknowledging the memory of honourable ancestors. We also welcome all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us for this webinar this afternoon. So welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to Barwon Health Foundation's Legacy Month and to our webinar. Welcome to those who are joining us live and also to those who are viewing this as a replay at some time in the future. Today is being run as a webinar, so you can only see myself and our special guests. We can't see you, but you'll be able to participate, and we encourage that by clicking on the raise hand button towards the bottom of your Zoom screen, and subject to time, we'll try and unmute you and get your question for our guests. Alternatively, you can type a question by clicking on the chat box. For those of you who may have joined us in the past webinars, you'd be familiar with how we generally run with a special guest, a clinician, a researcher or a leader from Barwon Health. And we'll be doing that today, of course, but we're also going to introduce each week for this series of legacy webinars, one of Geelong's prominent and influential leaders for a chat. And I am looking forward to that today with our special guest, founder of Villawood Properties, Rory Costelloe, and Associate Professor Steve Moylan, Clinical Director of Mental Health, Drugs and Alcohol Services with Barwon Health. Welcome to both of you, and we'll be getting to you shortly. So this month is Legacy Month, which is a time for us all to celebrate life and to reflect on the legacy we're leaving or will leave when we depart this life. Our legacy is how we wish to be remembered, the values by which we've tried to live, and an opportunity to show appreciation and a lasting impact on what we see as important. Ralph Waldo Emerson was an American philosopher from the mid-1800s who once said, "To leave the world a bit better, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded." And I think you'll agree that they are very profound words, and it does make you reflect that giving the gift of good health is within reach of us all, not just our healthcare heroes. As we all know, COVID-19 first surfaced in Australia in January last year, and within a month or two, it started to hit home how serious the pandemic could be. There was considerable fear in the community, and for a while there were some that had thoughts that we were almost coming face to face with our Armageddon. There have been almost 1,000 deaths in Australia as a result of the pandemic, the majority 820 right here in Victoria. And we're all still currently being affected in some way or another by this virus, but as we do the right thing and get our vaccinations, there's surely light at the end of the tunnel that we've been in for almost 18 months. As I said, July is Legacy Month, and it's coming right at a time where hopefully we've turned the corner amidst that COVID backdrop. Over this period, many people have considered their mortality and have been keen to get their affairs in order. Some are having their wills prepared for the first time, and circumstances change, so some are reassessing arrangements they may have made in the past. Many are thinking about their legacy and, importantly, how they can contribute to make the world a better place. In the past 12 months, the number of sales of online will kits increased by 265% in Victoria alone. Now, I know that some can feel a little uncomfortable in talking about wills, I guess because it's personal, of course, and involves death, but I think this shows great common sense, particularly as many of those who have made or are looking into making their wills are in fact in the younger age brackets. The other interesting statistic is that if people are asked if they want to leave a gift in their will to a charitable cause, the numbers actually double. Now, at Barwon Health Foundation, we strongly believe that there's no better cause than a consideration to giving the gift of good health, not the least reason being Geelong deserves the very best. This giving can be in the form of a considered bequest in a will, and it really doesn't matter how large or small that gift may be. In addition to bequests, over the past 18 months, we've also seen an increase in memoriam gifts, donations as a legacy in memory of loved ones. There are also living legacies. These are donations and are now placed into an endowment to provide a sustainable support for Barwon Health services into the future. There are so many wonderful examples of great number of people who have purchased a leaf, either for themselves or in memory of a loved one, for $500,000 or $2,000 on our lasting legacy tree, which has been established just alongside the main entrance in the hospital. We've also seen major gifts that have now been placed into named funds of individuals and families as living legacies. And there are so many great stories of giving, and in coming weeks, we'll give you some examples of those. But none of this community's giving is new. In fact, Geelong Hospital was built on a legacy of giving from its early days in the 1840s, when a committee was formed by the Reverend Andrew Love, a name familiar to us all, to fundraise for a hospital for the Geelong community. They worked hard raising money and then received a bequest, our first bequest, which Jack Ayerbe will tell you about shortly. And if you'd like any more information on how you can make an impact, either right now or in the future, please give us a call at the foundation and we'd be happy to have a confidential chat with you. And also, I'd just like to let you know that during Legacy Month, you can get your will written for free by one of our prominent local law firms who are donating services for the good of the community. Now, please let me introduce a proud member of the Geelong community who has that wonderfully strong social conscience and belief to give back to the region he loves. He's a well-known, respected and loved community member and is involved in diverse areas beyond his occupation as a vet. His passions include animal welfare and the fascinating science and research into One Health, which recognises that the health of people is connected to the health of animals and the environment. For many years, Barwon Health was privileged to have Jack's contribution as a member of the Foundation Council. He's also involved with a group who go by the name of the WAWSOs, that's WAWSO, standing for We All Were Something Once. And I can tell you that unlike their acronym, they're absolutely still something. The group raised money for cancer research at Adrian Costa Clinical Trials Centre at their annual dinner. And that group includes a fine man by the name of Mike Fairweather, who I think is tuned in today. And we're hoping to speak to Mike on one of these webinars in coming weeks of his experiences as a patient at University Hospital Geelong and how strongly he feels about giving back. And both Mike and Jack, together with Bob Eadie and Richard Barn, are also members of our Bequest Committee and Tim Malloy Society. So a big thank you to them all. Please give a big virtual hand to Jack Ayerbe.
Thank you very much, Francis. I almost wondered who you were talking about there. It's been embarrassing. You know, in Geelong, we have the privilege of having a fantastic health system. In fact, I always say, if you're going to get crook in Geelong, because it is such a wonderful place. And this goes for my family who've had experiences with Barwon Health over the last 20, 30 years, and the service and the standard has been absolutely fantastic. However, to keep this going is quite difficult because, as you know, governments, both federal and state government, are running into huge amounts of debt, and financing organisations like Barwon Health are going to become more and more difficult. And this is why the bequests are so important. If we want to ensure that for our children and grandchildren, the same standard of health care in Barwon Health stays and remains, then the bequests areas are absolutely vital. And also, we want to improve Barwon Health. We want to improve the standard of care. We want to improve the scientific research. And consequently, we do need money to do this. And one of the easiest ways of doing it is bequests, as far as we're concerned, because you don't spend the money while you're here. It's spent when you're gone. And this is why we have a society, the Tim Malloy Society. Now, Tim Malloy, and if those of you have heard this story before, I apologise. Otherwise, have a listen. Tim Malloy was a shepherd in early parts of Geelong, and he was bitten by a black snake. And as he was dying, he asked his boss, a chap named Cowie, for a bit of paper, and he wrote a will on a bit of paper and left his entire estate to the formation of a Geelong hospital. And that was our first bequest. So we have this society called the Tim Malloy Society. Now, to join, you just have to tell us that you want to leave some money in your will as a bequest to Barwon Health. If you do that, we make you a member of our society. In the fullness of time, we'll present you with a badge. And also, from time to time, we'll give you some entertainment, which is a privilege for people within society. So, Francis, that's about it. This is a very important, I think, month, and we must really stress how valuable. And as far as the Tim Malloy Society is concerned, it doesn't matter how much you leave. The fact is, if you just leave something, that is important. So we look forward to hearing from you. And if you want to join our society, just give the Barwon Health Foundation a call. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jack. Thanks for your involvement and your ongoing support. It's really, really appreciated. As I said earlier, we've got two very special guests with us this afternoon, and with the short amount of time we have today, I already know we won't be able to do justice to them or for you who've tuned in, so I apologise in advance for that. Our first guest is founder and executive director of Villawood Properties and is acknowledged as one of Australia's most creative and innovative developers. From humble beginnings as a Bendigo-based property syndicate group, Rory's hands-on management has seen Villawood grow to become one of Australia's most successful and credentialed property companies. With formal qualifications in engineering, Rory contributes to a range of sector boards and leadership committees, as well as industry, academic and government think tanks. Also, most importantly, he's on the board of Barwon Health Foundation. Welcome to Rory Costelloe.
Hi Francis, how are you going?
Good. Now, Rory, I must say I got a bit of a shock around an hour ago as I went online to the Villawood website to check where Villawood developments currently are. And I saw there a series of interviews with you by none other than Ray Martin. Now, I certainly don't have his interviewing skills, nor his hair. If I had a choice, I'd go for his hair. But I do feel humbled now under a fair bit of pressure. And if anyone's disappointed, they can always head over to the Villawood Properties website to see how it should be done.
We paid Ray to do those, but you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, so you'll be better.
Thank you very much. Rory, I read an article which described you as a ditch digger, a builder, an engineer, an innovator, a triathlete, a philanthropist, a developer, and all-round colourful character. Now, we'll try and touch on all those over the next 20 minutes, but for all that, first tell us about your upbringing. And I know that you moved with your family to Geelong from Bendigo, but you told me at the football the other night that you were raised on the other side of the bay in Cheltenham.
Yeah, well, just first, that long description, Francis, you wrapped it up as Jack of all trades and master of none, is probably the best way to describe it. I was born in Cheltenham I think we lived in a product of what we do now. Is when I was about 4 years old, we moved into a cream brick house in a new 512 square metre block in a newer housing estate in Cheltenham, which only 500 metres away was the market gardens. We used to catch lizards and frogs. So I actually was a product of living in the outer suburban growth areas back then, back in the 60s, and that's what I'm doing for a living now.
So you and your wife settled in Bendigo, where you initially raised your 4 daughters, and then began your journey in establishing Villawood Properties, which was a hard slog at first. Then you had you digging ditches. So tell us how the business got off the ground.
I've been asked that many times, but I was a consulting engineer. Used to go to these meetings with some other developers, and used to come back to my boss and say, "We should do this. It's more money being developer is being a consultant." So, another real estate agent asked me to come into a group. Do you want to invest? So he collected the people together, and I just sort of picked the company up and really probably picked up the ball and really ran with it. But 16 people put in $10,000 each. We bought a piece of land, 150,000, and developed to 30 lots. That was in 1989, and 32 years later, we've got about 17,000 lots in the pipeline. So it's just grown organically over that time.
So when did the business really start to click in, and when and why did you get to Geelong and decide Geelong would be your home?
I was a really tough gig. Back in the 90s, we didn't really make much money. It was really just self-help. The agent, the real estate agent, the lawyer, the accountant, myself, the engineer, all the contractor, were all involved in the syndicates. It was almost a self-employment group because the recession was pretty hard back in the 90s. I always called it my MBA in life. I've never studied too hard, but I say I've done the MBA in life by going through the recession, which Jeff Kennett got us out of back about 96. I think the tide turned, and then the business sort of just picked up. It just started making a little bit of money. We went to Melbourne, bought a property in 1999, and had to be in Melbourne 1 night a week, then 2 nights a week, and 3 nights a week. So we had to pick the family up, and they had to live in Melbourne or live somewhere else. And we picked Geelong because I didn't particularly want to bring up my kids in Melbourne. Since I'd spent 30 years in Bendigo, I liked that country lifestyle, and I thought Geelong was the best fit because, and I've just loved it ever since. And our kids, I think we've been here about 6 months, and said, "Did you ever want to go back to Bendigo?" They go, "No. This is back in 2003." So 18 years later, still here and still love the place.
How old are your daughters?
20 to 30 now, or 22 to 30 at the moment.
Right. I remember having lunch at Ray and Sue Frost's home down Lawn a couple of summers ago, and you arrived with your wife Katrina. I remember you plonked a tub of honey on the table as a gift.
Yeah.
Kamaruka honey, in fact. Tell us about Kamaruka honey.
You want a prop? You want a prop to the?
That's it.
Right. We do a biodiversity offset up in for all our land. So you buy a block of land, we give the same amount of land back to the government in the biodiversity offset, which we buy farms up in the Kamaruka National Park, north of Bendigo. We own a few thousand acres there. And the beekeeper just wanted to keep some bees in our lands, which he asked us, and he started giving us the honey. Then I decided to start giving it away. So now we buy about 2,000 tubs a year off him and give it to every buyer gets a block. Every buyer gets a tub of honey. Anybody who walks to their office gets a tub of honey. Or anywhere I get for dinner or visits our house gets a tub of honey, basically. So it's a fun thing. And
that contribution of the land back in Bendigo,
yes.
Is that something that you have to do, an obligation?
No, it's a thing we like to do. We just call it a biodiversity offset. So it's a national park, so it doesn't matter where we are, and we're developing our land. We're still contributing to a national park because basically we buy a 300-acre paddock farm and just pull the fences down. But within 5 years, because it's in the farm's in the middle of a national park, within 5 years they regenerate back into forest again, and because there's no cows grazing anymore and kangaroos come in, but the bush within 5 years you can't drive in the blocks anymore because they've become forest again.
Mm. Now I know this contribution and vision of sustainability doesn't end there with Villawood. Tell us about is it Aqua Revo?
That's more sustainability more than charitable, but yeah, we always just try to strive to lead the pack in whether it's in social responsibility or environmental responsibility. We try pretty hard along the way to make sure. So Aqua Revo is a project we've done a joint venture with South East Water, where we put a whole lot of infrastructure in to save power and save water, which we do. You can probably, if you search this online, you'll find the lectures we've done. You can actually go through the whole thing, chapter and verses, exactly what's going on. So it's all available there on our website, I think. But I won't bore you today with too much energy and too much about energy and water. I think we're more about community today, I assume.
Yeah. Now, Rory, as we all know, fashion is a bit of a moving target. And in recent times, I've noticed that the shirt racks at Myers still have the staple plain white and the striped and the check pattern shirts, but just occasionally we see a few more colourful designs. And you've been known, and a bit of a standout, I should say, for your colourful shirts, and you haven't disappointed today. And I've seen a couple of your co-directors at the foundation, Ray Frost and Ken Harrison, try and emulate your style. Have you always had that extroverted fashion sense?
Oh, and I used to wear loud ties, but I think my 50th, my business partner, he never wore a tie, so I stopped wearing ties. Then I lost my loudness, I suppose. So my 50th, my kids gave me a very loud shirt, and so that was Eddie Elias down in Mirabel Street, or back in Malloy Street back then, but he's moved to Mirabel Street. Give a little plug to Andy Durante. And then I just put a whole stack of them off him now, and everyone just gives them to you. So you can't avoid them now. People expect you to turn up a loud shirt, and every birthday, Christmas, everything in between, you get more shirts, and it just keeps a bit like land, I suppose, just keeps accumulating.
Where's that number come from, the one you got on today?
Oh, this was Christmas present, I think, from the family, but not sure where it's. I think the brand's called Philip, I think, but I do enjoy the colours, obviously. So
I could see Jack in that. Jack, would you wear that?
I think it would be a little bit difficult for me, Francis. I've got nothing against them, but I don't have the coloured personality which matches the shirt. I'm far more of the conservative type, as you know.
I'm probably trying to make up some other deficit, but anyway.
Rory, and look, on that theme of the shirts, you're also a lover of art, and I can see that artwork, sculptures, and urban design all play a significant role at Villawood. How did that come about, and what are the greatest design principles of a Villawood development?
Well, the whole thing is just create a community. You just want to create a place where people really love to live, and the sculptures themselves, which is our main signature. I do like art in general, but I really get into the sculptures. I just met a sculptor back in, I think it was back in 2001 at the Flower Show in Melbourne, and he's been working for me. He gave me his card. I gave him my card, and he never rang me. And I rang him about 6 weeks later. He said, "You haven't rang me." He said, "You thought I was a tire kicker." Anyway, he's probably built 200 pieces for me since then. So I've stayed in his house a few times down Tasmania. He's a fantastic guy and a great cook. And so he's really helped our brand, I suppose, just give that difference. And the reason we started doing sculptures is because developers at the start of projects used to do these big monolithic structures with big words written all over it. And they spent a hell of a lot of money on it and a whole lot of intersection treatments to create an entry, but didn't have that longevity. The council stopped maintaining. They looked like crap after years to come. So something with a lot more longevity, put that same money into art throughout your project and throughout the parks. And most of our art is on natural themes, I suppose, animals and birds and plants, so that people, because the average person in your project does, if you're not over sophisticated in your choice of art, but everybody appreciates, whether it's young or small, they all appreciate birds and animals, and anything to do with nature always has an affinity with most people, I think.
And you've got that big Villawood sign out on the hill out, where's that out at?
Wandana. It has actually disappeared now because they're actually building a house in the block, so we had to take it away. But
you've had a lot of messages there over the.
We had a lot of fun. Yeah, probably nearly a decade. We had a lot of fun. A lot of fun there, putting a lot of messages up, and a lot of them were tripled with my kids too. They're the ones with the bigger social responsibility, I suppose, who kept egging me on with, vote yes and stand with refugees and a whole lot of social messaging. Get vaccinated was the last one, which a lot of people took real exception to, and destroyed it many times, that sign. So it caused a fair bit of controversy in the community, which sometimes we just like to do that too. We're not the social custodian of what should be happening, but we just put out a topic for discussion, create controversy, and people just opens the conversation.
Yeah. Rory, you've been pretty well known. You've been an outstanding contributor to the Royal Children's Hospital, where together with building partners, you've raised over $8 million for them, which is just outstanding. And currently you are dry Julying for the Barwon Health Foundation, raising funds for the Andrew Love Cancer Centre. So it's day 8, one of the longest months of the year, which I remind you of, and also it's got 5 weekends. So how's all that going?
Well, look, I did pretty well. Went to the Cats game at the President's and didn't drink. We were at the table, so I wasn't allowed to drink because they had witnesses. But I did have a few drinks with the director's lunch. So it's one golden ticket I've got to buy, and there's a few family things coming up, so there could be a few golden tickets on the cards. I think I've just ticked over $3,000 today. So thanks to everyone so far who's chipped in. I've sent the invitation to participate to many people. Their shareholders and friends, etc. So they just keep rolling at the moment. So just encourage everyone to keep giving to it for the great cause.
Well, it's a great effort, and it's not just about sobriety and health. It is about fundraising, and what could be a better cause than Andrew Love Cancer Centre. And I will send everyone a link. You can contribute to Rory's fund, or there's Billy Brownless's Frothy Fund, and you can support Zoe Waters and a number of other ambassadors. So any support that you can give would be very much grateful for.
And just on that topic too, I lost a brother 3 years ago to cancer, and then so like two of my contributors today was my sister-in-law, my wife's wife. She just contributed, but also another friend in Geelong who lost her husband last year to cancer as well. So it's obviously very close to many people's hearts. So mention the word everyone really wants to give.
Absolutely. We need to move on and get on to our discussion with Associate Professor Steve Moylan and mental health. But Rory, there was an experience that you've had within your own workplace which had tragic consequences. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we just suddenly and shockingly lost our CEO. It was 3 years ago now, or nearly 3 years ago now, which really turned our business on its head for 12 months at least. The team just went in, the whole team almost imploded, and so it was a severe shock to our whole system, and because we didn't know it, and it was happening. We had no sign. It was a mental health issue. He took his own life, so it was I think I had chest pains about 3 months after that, worrying about the consequences of the whole thing. And it really just has opened up our eyes to the whole issue of mental health. So certainly we've always given the Royal Children's Hospital and had general health in our mind, but obviously we've turned a bit more attention to mental health now as well.
Yeah, no, that's I'm sure that was just an awful experience to go through. Rory, thanks for joining us, and thanks for your contribution to Geelong, to the foundation, and to Philanthropy. And apologies for cutting it short, but we are pressed for time, and yeah, as I said, apologise for that. Now we turn our attention to Associate Professor Steve Moylan. Despite his youthful looks, Steve has been with Barwon Health since 2008, which is not that long ago, I suppose, when he started as an intern. In 2009, he took up a role with the MHDAS, our Mental Health, Drug and Alcohol Service, subsequently completing his specialist training and contributing to the broader team in delivering care to the community. Steve is a consultant psychiatrist specialising in old age psychiatry. He holds a Master's for Public Health from Harvard and completed his PhD in psychiatric epidemiology with Deakin University in 2015. He's a keen advocate for the local community, holding director roles on 2 not-for-profit boards, involvement on the Advisory Council of the Mental Health Complaints Commission, and has been a representative on numerous other state and federal government committees. So a very, very busy man, and we do appreciate you joining us today, Steve.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now you hold one of the most, apart from all that, you hold one of the most important and one of the most demanding, and I'd imagine probably one of the most stressful jobs in our health system as a the clinical director of mental health, drugs and alcohol services. Do you ever feel the stress and pressure of your role?
Oh, 100%, of course. Yeah, every day. I think that if you didn't, there'd be something wrong. I think so I suppose the way I would frame that is that if I didn't feel that stress, I think that I would probably be becoming disconnected from the purpose of what we're trying to do. There is an enormous amount of distress and unmet need around mental health concerns in our community. Our team, which is amazing and growing, we have just over 500 people now working with our mental health service every day, working with people individually as families and communities to help people in some of the most serious, times of their lives. And so, but I do all the time think about, are we making enough of a difference? How can we extend our services more? And really, how can we change this narrative that's going on around the mental health of our community? Because I think for so long there's been a feeling that mental health is either an area that is ignored, to be avoided, or too hard. And I suppose one of the messages I like to always bring to the community is that there is fantastic work being done supporting people's mental health every day by our teams and by many other professionals and non-professionals alike in our community. And when I reflect on that, I go, of course, if we can do that more consistently and for more people, better is possible, actually. So that's really the why I'm so keen to kind of work with the foundation and other bodies as well, because I think we should all be buoyed by what we can do. The problem at the moment is we probably don't do it enough or consistently enough. And if we're able to do that together as a community, we can really reap significant rewards.
Yeah. Now, you're originally from Perth.
I am. I'm West Australian.
WA. But you, like Rory, are now a passionate champion for Geelong, and a perfect example of Geelong having that ability to attract and retain the most talented and brightest minds in our region. What do you like about Geelong and your role?
Look, I came to Geelong not having ever been here. So I took the job here on the basis that a friend said he had a friend who liked working here, which is the sort of thing you do when you're a young person without any kind of, things holding you back. And, really ever since I've been here, it's I'm not a big city person by any stretch. Growing up in Perth, suburban Perth, when I was, it's not a big city by any stretch, really. And Geelong really was a mirror, I think, to some respects of what was like growing up in Perth. The beaches are one thing, but it's more of the community vibe and the connection that's happened. And I'll just say over time, I've probably just been really fortunate that I've met fantastic people who have given me tremendous opportunities. I've had the opportunity to go away and do interesting things, but always felt welcome coming back. And now I'm in the position where, I'm married, I have children here, my wife is heavily engaged in the community too, and we feel really at home. And we were talking about that last night at dinner with other friends who are also not from the Geelong region, about how, isn't it just funny that without any connection really at all to this place, we all now feel this place is home.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have you. Mental illness is common and doesn't really discriminate. 1 in 5 Australians experience mental health illness every year, and with around half of all Australians experiencing mental health illness in their lifetime, it's one of Australia's top 3 leading causes of disease burden and the largest contributor to the disability burden in Victoria. And it affects not just those who are suffering directly, but also family, friends and sometimes workmates. We've just heard Rory's story of his colleague. So where are the biggest issues in mental health? Is it amongst those who may be on the fringe, amongst those with alcohol and drug issues, amongst our young, the workplace, or all of the above?
I mean, you can name a place, position in society, and you can find significant mental health need. I think we have to reflect that mental health needs are more likely to occur in people who have less. So people who are less socially connected, people who are less financially well off, people who have other insecure facets of their life are more likely to express mental health issues, and also associated substance use and other issues too. So I think that's really important. In the last year, so there's been a kind of rising tide of mental health disorders really across the spectrum, and we can all hypothesize what that means for our society and why that's occurring. But certainly in the last year with COVID, we've seen quite significant changes actually to a couple of distinct groups. And the first has been, there's been a significant increase in young people with eating disorders who are presenting for specialist care. And it's a very unusual thing, but it's a worldwide phenomenon that is being expressed and people don't really understand why. The second thing is there's clearly been more distress in our younger populations, so school age and teenage children, and you can obviously say the disruption to schooling and remote schooling, and those issues have created bigger issues too. And whilst at this stage, quite fortunately, the rates of suicide in Victoria have not increased over the last 3 years, which is, I think a really positive thing. I think all of us would reflect that as a society overall, we just aren't bouncing with the same degree of ebullience we may have been a couple of years ago. The impact of this, of this pandemic just adds an extra burden, weight, and sort of element of fatigue, which is dragging our entire society down. And because of that, I think we have to work more, work even harder to push against that and come together around causes and make sure that we're sharing and supporting each other.
Yeah. A few months back, the final report from the Royal Commission into mental health was released. Now I understand it's around 3,500 pages. Did you have any input into the hearings and the process, and what are amongst the key recommendations?
Yeah, I think that Barwon Health and the Geelong community should be really proud actually of the impact we had on the Royal Commission. So we are mentioned innumerable times through the Royal Commission's report, in the evidence we provided to the particular hearings, and our written submissions that we provided, and also as an exemplar of sort of innovative ways that we are providing care for our community. So I think we should be really proud of that impact and the representation that we have, which I would say was disproportionate really to kind of our size and previous sort of scope. The Commission though lays out, quite frankly, things that were already known about the system. It's broken, disjointed, it's difficult to access care, that there's a fair degree of reliance on fortune to get the care that you need, whether that be luck or money, to be frank, and that for some of the most needy in our society, they really are being sort of left to the side. And the government's response in the Victorian budget really was of a scale that has never been seen before in mental health investment. So $3.8 billion over the next 4 years in mental health investment is the single largest investment ever made by a state or federal government in mental health in Australia's history, and is more than the national agreement between the state and federal government about mental health. So this is, I don't think there can be any doubt that the government at the moment in Victoria is deeply committed to the reform agenda that it set up at the beginning by calling the Royal Commission. What we now need to do is come together to make the most of that. And it's all going to be in how the rubber hits the road, how you use those resources in a policy in a community setting to make a difference to the people who, really we can make a difference for. So I'm really excited about it, actually. I think there's a huge opportunity. There's a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of challenges, and there's going to be, it's going to require the whole of community to become involved. But I genuinely feel if you are passionate about making a difference to the mental health of our community, there will never be a better time than this. This is the time.
And the key recommendations?
So there's a variety. There's actually geez, I'm having a mind blank, but there was 65 recommendations in the final report and 9 in the interim report. So there's 74 altogether that the government has committed to, well, at least Premier Andrew is committed to implementing all of those recommendations in the final report. So they go over a variety of different things, but if you wanted to talk through them, they're about sort of service delivery, the provision of services. They're about infrastructure to support services. They're about innovation in care, so opportunities in digital and other things. There will be a refinement of legislation and government governance processes. So essentially everything, really. It is a fundamental rebuild, redesign of the mental health system. And the key thing about it is that for the first time it sets in my vision, first time it sets a proper full-scale review of what the mental health system should look like at a global level, and how everything should run together, which I think is really aimed at some of the key aspects of mental health. Is not so much that there's not enough help out there, it's that it's just difficult to find. People find themselves going doors to the wrong places and not knowing where to go. And if we can align up a system that makes it easy for people to enter, that doesn't matter where they enter, they'll get a similar process that helps them find the care they need in a warm and compassionate way. I think we can make the system both more effective and extremely more efficient.
Yeah. So Steve, talking about that care, so with mental health services, there are lots of players. There's GPs and primary care providers, specialist mental health service system, clinical, non-clinical services. And in a moment, I want to ask you about a couple of the new facilities that are about to be built to support mental health services in Geelong, which should be online by the end of next year. But can you tell us of the current services of mental health at Barwon Health? I assume we're at the pointy end.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So our role is really, we are as the public health provider, we are a provider of, in some respects, we take on issues and concerns that other providers don't. But to give a full spectrum of the conditions, a lot of people think mental health, a mental health service like mine is just about an inpatient unit. People would hear about things like the Swanson Centre, etc. That is our intensive care unit, people with the highest degree of needs. But we also have, as I said before, hundreds of staff working in the community, working with thousands of people at a time across various age group and specialty services. Sorry, sustainability is the key. Sorry about that. Working across a variety of different teams, across age groups, etc. So Barwon, as a service provider, we will provide service for anyone from birth or before birth even. We're supporting pregnant women and families all the way through to the end of life, across age groups and across the entire geography of the G21. So we operate both in, in the north and central and southern Geelong, and through Colac and Apollo Bay region as well. So we really are, besides some very distinct, bespoke kind of specialist things, which are more appropriately provided in a central location in Melbourne, we can provide the whole gamut of services for people. What
about the hospital at home services? Do we do those?
Yeah, so there's been some really interesting innovations that have come out of the Mental Health Royal Commission, and one of the things that we were able to lobby for and implement was a mental health hospital in the home service. So what we've recognised for a long period of time, I think, is that there are people who are admitted to hospital, but they don't have a particularly good experience whilst in hospital. They have their own mental health concerns, and the hospital environment disconnects them sometimes from their supports, family, friends, and other people. But their needs are such they need really intensive support. So this year we launched what's called a mental health hospital in the home. So we aim to provide the same degree of intense support that would be provided if you're in hospital, but in your own home environment. And that means we come and visit you twice a day at your house. A doctor will see you every day. We're available on telehealth when you need us. And we found in the early, I think 30 or 40 people have gone through the program, something like that now, since it launched a couple of months ago. And we get really good feedback that for some people, their experiences they've had previously in inpatient environments were far exceeded by this kind of support, because they could be near their family, friends, or just be in the comfort of their own environment, which I'm sure everyone here can intrinsically understand.
The Swanson Centre has just undergone some work. What's happened there, and how will that improve services?
I'd have to say our services are kind of like a bit of a building site at the moment, because there's sort of capital programs going on all over the place. So we were really fortunate 3 or so years ago to get some money to, what I would say, just sort of touch up and improve some of the care that we're providing in our inpatient unit at Swanson Centre. Swanson Centre is a very old building. It was built in the middle 90s. And so we've been able to sort of improve amenity by, redoing some bedrooms, providing single care areas, some more intensive care areas for people. And that work is ongoing, but is due to finish by the end of this year, which would be terrific. In addition, we've just kicked off the first stage of building the mental health and alcohol and other drug hub in ED. So people could understand that the kind of casino and lights environment of an emergency department sometimes isn't the best environment for people with a mental health concern. And so we're building a special place, a special kind of structure for people who are coming in with those concerns to receive treatment and care in an environment that's, more appropriate to them. We're also, just about to kick off, and maybe I'll flip over to a couple of these things as well, Francis. We're really excited to have had 2 major new initiatives come online too. The first has come straight out of the Royal Commission, which is the establishment of a new mental health inpatient unit at the McKellar Centre. The groundworks for that are just starting at the moment, and we think this will come online in about 12 months. And the purpose of this is to provide an environment for people from about the age of 50 up, sort of a specialist environment that will be able to help people with their acute mental health needs, and also with any physical or rehabilitative needs they have as well. So it's really an environment that's designed to help people who are experiencing mental health conditions to, in later stages of their life rather than their youth, to get the best quality care to prevent any deterioration that may come in their other functioning. And then the final thing that we've just started is we've just confirmed really what I would say is the first of hopefully 4 of these, a very large integrated new community mental health hub in the CBD. So it's above the old Belcher Arcade. It'll be built over the next 12 months as well. And it'll be really what I think is a fantastic new development for Geelong CBD, where our mental health services will get to operate in an integrated fashion, run extended hours during the week, on weekends and into the evenings, and provide a place where people in the community, if they're concerned about their mental health, can come anytime to receive support and care. And I think this would just be a fantastic thing, both for the community and also for the recognition of the importance of mental health itself, to have a brand new, really nice building that is purpose-built for mental health will, I think, communicate something to the community which says mental health is really important, and people who are wanting to access care should be able to do so in the best quality environments.
And that's a massive investment. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the facility at McKellar is about $60 or $70 million. The one in the CBD is 16 million. And as you said, 4 are planned. I think 1 maybe in Colac. So there's another $64 million. So it's great that it's not just words, coming from the government. There's real action, real money being poured into a very, very important area.
Yeah.
Professor Michael Burke, and for those who don't know, is a triple Brownlow medalist, 5-time premiership captain, rock star mental health researcher, but quite seriously a world authority in mental health research, has said before that there was a stigma and a reluctance in the past to talk about mental health for so many years. And it was one of its biggest problems in creating public awareness of the telltale signs of people recognising issues they may have been experiencing themselves, and was a barrier to philanthropy to support mental health research. For years, people have been proud to wear a ribbon or join a fun run, proudly displaying their battle with cancer, but no one wanted to identify themselves as being a sufferer of mental health issues. But gladly, this seems to have changed. Have you seen that change yourself, Steve, in the last decade?
Certainly you do. I still think, however, we have a little way to go. I think that people are very happy to share certain aspects of mental health related things. There's certain aspects of their mental health related history, and particularly in talking about things like anxiety and depression and these sorts of conditions, people are far more open about that. I still think that there is significant stigma and confrontation about the impacts of severe mental disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe substance use disorders, etc. And I think also around suicidality. I think when people are I think our conversation around suicide is is still a challenging one. And that's very understandable. Suicide itself is, both it's a very confronting and also a very challenging thing to talk about and understand. And I think if we're willing to have these conversations and be open to them, I think that we'll start to be able to see our way through see through what is a path forward to improving the mental health of our entire community. I think the other thing that challenges mental health probably more than in a philanthropic kind of perspective is that people say, I want to give to mental health, but what am I giving to? I think people, when, in some respects, people understand the purchase of a machine for, to help a neonatal child, with their breathing, or they understand the purchase of something else, or to fund a clinical trial. But what am I doing in mental health? What am I doing in mental health? Because a lot of the improvements that will come in mental health won't necessarily come with gross technology. They'll come with how can we improve the systems that we provide through giving the space to really have good conversations with community about how we can improve the quality of care and the quality of experience for people. And it's actually sometimes a little bit more challenging to communicate where you can make that difference. And that's where I think organisations like the Barwon Health Foundation, which can, collect up, and bring together contributions and then make targeted investments into our mental health, environment, which has happened already with support of our CHIME initiative, which is about improving our care delivery by bringing together Barwon and Deakin, is a great example and a great mechanism, I think, for people who want to contribute but don't exactly know how. Because we can work with the Barwon Health Foundation about how all of those contributions can come together and make a really big difference for our community through improving the way we provide mental health services.
Yeah, I think, look, we've certainly seen a shift from the foundation's point of view. Our Run for Geelong event, an annual event, which had previously raised money exclusively for the Andrew Lovegood Cancer Centre or the Kids Rehab Centre at Mackellar, was changed a couple of years back to give participants a choice of where they wanted their money directed to. And they could choose between cancer services, cardiology, women's and children's health, and a couple of others. And the most supported was mental health, which just goes to show that public awareness and preparedness to show their support has grown, which is a great thing. Last year, we had the Shaka appeal to check in on a mate. That was the Shaka. Can you do a Shaka, Jack? That's not quite it, but anyway. We had that. That was designed to create awareness amongst workers and students. And later in the year, we've got a planned event that will be supported by KROC, the Wheel Challenge for Mental Health. And we'll be looking for teams to join in raising funds and awareness for mental health. And we'll send everyone a link on that project if anyone wishes to participate. You mentioned just before CHIME. So CHIME is the Change to Improve Mental Health, which is headed by Renee Carolan. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Yeah, so I think once again, talking about the mental health system, in some respects, there's very, very good quality of care going on in the system right now. The problem is that not that the high quality of care doesn't exist, is that it's done too infrequently or inconsistently. So how do we as a service, delivery system, try and improve the quality of care and the consistency of the quality of care for the people coming through our system? That's the big question. And one of as you mentioned before, Michael Burke and his team at Impact do genuinely groundbreaking world-class research here in Geelong. People may not recognise how important that is, but it is clearly Australian and internationally leading work. But unfortunately, for a long period of time, the expertise that happened with Michael's work and the Deakin work more generally wasn't making that impact in our service delivery. CHIME's about bridging that gap. It's about finding the mechanisms and ways where we can genuinely utilise all of these learnings that are coming from Deakin University and their academia and improve our service delivery, and also use our service delivery as the platform to develop learnings that can be disseminated not just here more locally, but also nationally and internationally about how to do really good mental health care. Some of it's basics, and some of it actually requires really sophisticated expertise in how and understanding what a consumer really needs in a particular point in time, and what are some of the opportunities that we should be providing to really make the biggest difference. And if I can give one example, it's very well known that if you participate in a clinical trial, you will get an improvement, irrespective of whether or not you take the active or the non-active drug.
The placebo effect of clinical trials leads people universally in general to improve. And the reason for that is that they're involved in something special. They have a purpose. They're a part of generating knowledge. They're contributing to something bigger than themselves, and they get a whole bunch of interest and other, activity that comes with it. We want to, for us to be able to, give those opportunities to participate in trials to the people we're caring for, sometimes we need some coordination to do that. And we have a couple of trials running at the moment where we're helping coordinate. And what we're seeing is that a whole bunch, now almost 60 young people have been identified to participate in a new trial being run by Deakin. And that just gives them, not only something that they're contributing to, so their illness that they're going through is contributing, their illness experience is contributing to something bigger than themselves, but it also gives them access to input and expertise they wouldn't have otherwise got. So what Chime, I hope, is able to produce in the end is really for the Geelong region. We can be a bit special here. We can create a platform where we can genuinely provide and produce a world-class mental health system. And the way we will do that is in partnership between the service providers, with academia, and with the community. And together we will generate the pathways and the service delivery system that meets our needs. And through that, we'll also be able to communicate to others the lessons that we've learned to hopefully meet their needs as well.
Yeah. Steve, I know that the foundation is very proud to be involved in Chime, and I congratulate our board on putting up the hand and saying, yes, we want to invest in this project. And also, as you mentioned, the clinical trials, the Adrian Costa Clinical Trial Centre, we're going to be talking to Paul Lightfoot in a few weeks about that. And I know there are clinical trials on dementia and autism and all sorts of things. So we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. We're sort of ticking down to time. So I want to thank you. I know you're in the middle of seeing patients, Steve, so thank you again for that. As I said earlier, we're so lucky to have you leading such an important area of public health. And I now pass back to Jack Ayerbe to formally thank everyone.
Well, to both of you, thank you for your commitment to Geelong. And Rory, I'm so impressed by your initiative and all the stuff you've been doing and your creativity. And it just blows me away. I always feel insignificant when I hear people like you talking. It's just amazing. And your commitment to Geelong, as I say, and indeed into general service. Thank you very, very much. Steve, it concerns me also about mental health. I mean, I belong to a profession which is reportedly has the highest rate of suicide of any profession. We don't know why we're working on it, but it's still very, very much a big issue in mental health. And as you rightly said, perhaps it isn't recognised as much in society as it should be, but it's certainly improving in very many ways. So thank you for the service you're doing, and also to the awareness you're creating within the community. And to both of you, if there's any way we can help from our little group, we'd be only too pleased to do so. So it's been a privilege to have you both talking. You're both very impressive people. As I say, I feel very humble thanking you, but thank you.
Hardly, Jack, but I think it's just perhaps said back that because I am part of the Barwon Health Foundation and different organisations I'm part of, you really see how much behind the closed doors and how hard the team do work towards supporting everything that goes on and to raise funds, etc. And then whether it's in Melbourne or Geelong, it's just quite incredible. And then the volunteers on top of that who do the tin shakings. It's just incredible, the network of people who put their heart and soul into supporting our hospital system. And the reason I first donated to the Royal Children's Hospitals wasn't because I think the government should be giving the money for the infrastructure, etc. But it's just to get the best health, best health minds from around the world to come to Melbourne or come to Geelong. I think that's what the giving's all about, is to have the very best cutting edge equipment to save people's lives, and the best hands and the best eyes, whatever, from the best surgeons and psychologists and psychiatrists around the world.
Let's keep it that way.
As we say, Geelong deserves the very best, and that's why we do it all. So in coming weeks, Jackie White from McKellar Palliative Care Services, together with Geelong Champion of Business and Community, Keith Fagg, will be here next Thursday. The following Thursday, the 22nd of July, we'll be talking to the amazing Rory Costelloe and extraordinary contributor Geelong, with Paul Lightfoot, the director of the new Adrian Costa Clinical Trial Centre. And in our final legacy webinar on the 29th of July, we'll be speaking to the retiring CEO of the Geelong Football Club and Chair of Barwon Health, Brian Cook, together with the Senior Staff Specialist of the Emergency Department at University Hospital Geelong, Dr. Julian Stella. So thank you, Steve, thank you, Rory, and thank you, Jack. We look forward to those webinars. I'll send everyone a link to those. And thanks again for joining us. Stay healthy and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
So I'm joined by Justine Finlay, Managing Director of Wightons Lawyers in Geelong. Welcome along, Justine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, how are you coping with your work during the cumulative 6 months of lockdown? I see you've been doing a lot of Zooming.
Yeah, it's been challenging, challenging for staff in and out of the office, but we are managing as everyone else is.
So in this digital age, how safe and how legal are digital signatures inserted in documents? Is it safe, or is there a need for new technology or new ideas around that?
Look, it is safe in certain documents. Certainly, contracts for real estate have become digital, and there's platforms that have been set up by various companies to ensure that that is quite safe. Our preference with wills and powers of attorney is that they are signed, physically signed documents. There's been some allowance for remote signing of those types of documents, but certainly our preference would be to have that as an original document.
Yeah. Well, Justine, as you know, this month we've been talking all about legacy, and there's an amazing statistic. I'm not sure how accurate, you might be able to verify it, but almost 60% of Australian adults don't have a will, which is really so alarming. So why do you think that figure is so high? And what are the repercussions if you don't have a will?
So, look, I'm not surprised at that statistic, given the number of people we see coming in their 40s, 50s and 60s who've never had a will before. I think that for some people it's accepting mortality. So the minute they actually make a will, they're accepting that they will die at some point. But unfortunately, that happens to the best of us. Maybe cost, maybe just the thought of having to get out and get it done, but it's actually not that difficult. Certainly from our perspective, most of the information that people need to make their will, they have on hand. It's in their head, or at worst case, we can talk to their accountants, we can talk to financial planners to get that information. But why is it important to have a will? Look, it's important so that your wishes are carried out as much as possible, that you have the opportunity to appoint who you want to manage your affairs when you've passed away, and that your assets are passing where you want them to pass in the most effective manner.
Yeah. And what are the repercussions if you don't have a will?
So if you don't have a will, then there is legislation in Victoria that governs where your assets pass and who can be appointed. Now, that may not be where you would want that to go. It's pretty much family tree. So linear type descendancies, spouse, children, and then out further. But definitely when people are in second marriages, children from different relationships, it becomes really, really messy and probably not what you would want.
No. And what age do you think we should be making our first will? And when and how often should they be reviewed?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question. I think once you've actually got assets, it's important to have a will. Or when you have children, it's important to have a will. Look, I've got clients of mine who are parents who will be bringing their children in when they're in their early 20s to get their wills done, and that's just forward planning. But certainly once you start working, you'll have superannuation. Once you buy a house, you'll have an asset. Once you have children, it's really important to get your will done. And look, I'd be suggesting that you at least revisit your will every 5 years, and definitely be talking to your lawyer every sort of 10 years, but at least revisit, have a look at what you've got in there and see whether anything's changed.
And so speaking of lawyers and the process, the role of an executor can be a complex one. Is it necessary to choose someone with a certain skill set, or is it more important to have a trusted person known to you, like a family member, and knowing that a lot of the fine points and legalities will be taken care of by a lawyer in any way?
Yeah, look, probably the latter, depending upon your estate. My advice would always be make sure that it's someone that you have complete trust in to take on that role. It's a really important role, but it does be someone who has any qualifications. remembering that there are lawyers, there are accountants, there are financial planners who will be able to help and assist with whatever needs to be done in relation to your estate. And my preference would be, as long as everyone gets along in the family, that it is a family member who is also a beneficiary who's looking after the estate. But every family is a little bit different. So it's working through what's best for your family.
Right. Now, I know this is your area of expertise, Justine, but I was reading somewhere recently where I think it was a Gold Coast guy was engaged by people who were knocking on death's door to go to their funerals or gravesides and reveal the secrets they want their loved ones to know. Now, I certainly wouldn't recommend that to anyone, but do you sometimes see, apart from choosing who they may include or who they may exclude in a will,
yes,
what people wanting to pass on messages from the grave, as it were, in their wills?
Look, not as much. We certainly have people wanting other letters and the like kept with their wills. We try and keep the wills to the necessities that need to be done. But I have seen some strange things happen and some strange wishes, particularly perhaps around what people want, in relation to funerals and those sorts of things. It's an opportunity to put that out there if that's where you want it to be, but maybe not in your will, depending on what it is.
Fair enough. Now, apart from a will, what are some of the other important things we should have documented?
So probably the other things that I'd be suggesting if you're looking at that type of planning is your powers of attorney. So a financial power of attorney, an appointment of a medical decision maker for you, and a personal power of attorney. And it's also really important to have a look at your superannuation as to whether you should be doing binding nominations. And, close to Barwon Health's heart are advanced care plan directives.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Justine. Thanks for your support of Barwon Health Foundation and Legacy Month.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.